Anime. It fucking sucks. But you know what is even more degenerative than anime? Dating sims. Fortunately, Doki Doki Literature Club isn't a dating sim. It's a family-friendly and playable Chinese cartoon that is free. This game is actually free on Steam, which is quite a surprise considering the price that you can evidently charge for a visual novel with cute girls on the cover. Because as the numbers suggest, that price can be pretty fucking high. This game has been getting a lot of plaudits lately as a pretty innovative and fresh horror game, and it's pretty well made. The art style is clean and nice and the writing does the characters and setting in the game justice. For the most part anyway. The game has a pretty clever idea of masquerading itself as a dating sim, rather than a psychological horror of sorts. And the first couple of hours, or less if you're a seasoned VN fan, definitely feel like you're playing a pretty cliche visual novel. Eventually, things get slightly darker and more mysterious, and then you're confronted with a somewhat upsetting scene, generally being the untimely end of one of the 3 girls that the game allows you to pursue: Sayori, Natsuki, or Yuri. And in typical anime style, there's the happy-go-lucky one, the small and angry one, and the quiet one with big tits. I think that perhaps the developers should have spent a little more time on the whole game files corrupting and being changed part of the game, and less on the gory stuff and jump scares. A big problem I particularly found with this game is that it was a little too predictable. I've seen a lot of people say something to the extent of, "Oh wow, I didn't see a lot of that creepy stuff coming. I thought this was just gonna be a chill dating sim." Despite the fucking insistent warning on both the Steam store page and when you start up the game saying you shouldn't play it if you suffer from depression or anxiety. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, because this is a legitimate warning. The game does explore touchy issues like depression, and it's definitely the sort of thing that could make people anxious. But unfortunately, this label does ruin some of the surprise. On my first playthrough, I went along with Sayori's storyline, because she is too pure for this world. I'll try not to spoil too much, but I'd assume that if you're watching this, then you've probably already played the game or have seen the fucktillion spoilers that are just about everywhere. When she didn't show up on the morning of the festival, it was pretty fucking obvious what had happened. The scene after wasn't really that shocking. Let's just say you shouldn't ask how she's hanging. She didn't fucking deserve this. The game does rely also on a sort of jump scare-esque method of shock horror, which isn't quite as fucking disgustingly cheap as something like Five Nights at Freddy's or Slender of ye old days, but still leaves you feeling a little cheated. The idea of having a good jump scare is to have the subject unsure of when it is going to happen, but knowing that it will happen at some point in time. A jump scare doesn't quite work when the subject knows exactly when it is going to happen. For example, when I walked up the steps and into Sayori's room. I never ended up playing through the rest of the game, mostly because I'd already had pretty much the entire thing spoiled for me via Facebook and people I'd spoken to. But everything that I found out didn't really surprise me at all. I did find the whole file changing and corrupting sort of idea with the game pretty interesting, but also a little too insistent on being self-aware and breaking the fourth wall, which happens just a little too much to be truly original these days. It's pretty obvious that Monica was behind it all, especially after seeing some of the spoilers. I just never really had the motivation to go back and finish this game because what would be the point? It almost feels like this game was purely for Let's Players on YouTube or Twitch to play and to get an easy reaction out of them to promote the game even more. But if this was the case, why didn't they charge for it? They definitely could have. Overall, it just kinda left me at odds with myself. I somewhat enjoyed it after playing it for the first time because the writing and art style was pretty good, but I just felt like the ending, particularly Sayori's, was lacking. Looking back, I feel I may have overrated my experience. There is something else about this game that left me feeling particularly disgruntled. Something that is pretty fucking inexcusable for a modern game. There aren't any Bloopers in this game. I don't know how much longer I can do this. How much longer I can live in a world where game developers and story writers seemingly don't even consider putting Bloopers in their games. What the fuck? You want a cutesy art style? Look at this motherfucker. You gonna tell me this glorious bastard isn't gonna fit in? Come on now. I mean, this game does have Sayori in it, and she's pretty close to being a Wooper to be fair. But it's just not the same. It's just disappointing to see games that in reality have a good idea behind them and can really bring something new and fresh to the table, only to be a little too predictable and far too Wooperless. It's time we took drastic action and boycotted anime once and for all. Operation Weeb Patrol will now commence. It's time to go on patrol, fellas.